Welcome back. Today is a free draw, and so kind of the themes of the past couple of free draws I've done are free models. We're going to be making something related to the interferometry project I've been working on, and today we're making these LWA long wavelength array antennas. These are the antennas that we use to receive radio signals that are coming from the sun that can tell us about the solar activity going on there, things like solar flares and coronal mass ejections. Whenever a large amount of energy is released, you can see it in those radio waves, and these antennas are able to read those radio waves. So let's get started. I think the first thing I'm going to want to do is create the mast and the top of the box. So the top of the box is this thing right here, and that holds the front end electronics, or what we call the FEE. So this is a pretty good FEE replacement. So all we have to do is just move it up, and then I guess depending on the size, we can size it up and down. I think we're going to want it to be slightly smaller, so let's size it down to maybe like half size. Something like that. Sweet. Okay, then underneath this box, we're going to want a cylinder for the mast of the antenna. So let's Shift A, and we will create a cylinder. And for the cylinder, we don't need that many vertices. We can keep it pretty low poly. Let's set it to 8. Let's set the radius to maybe like 0.25 or so, and set the depth to maybe 5. I guess I can try and keep this to scale. This is in meters. Okay, maybe keeping it to scale is going to be tough. I don't have all the dimensions are in front of me right now. So I'll just try and kind of freeball it. I'm not going to make the stake or anything, but I will make the ground mesh that goes on top of it. So we use the stake to obviously kind of poke it into the ground to make sure it doesn't go anywhere. But I think it would be a little challenging to make. Let's see. I think this is a roughly good size. If we come here, select this top face, have it snap to face, then let's look from the side and move it up. Okay, doesn't seem like it's snapped, but that's fine. Doesn't need to. Okay, so we have that. And now the next thing we want to do is make one of these wings. So there's 4 of these wings. I'm just going to make one of them, and then we'll try and kind of replicate it, or use some, I don't know, modifiers or duplications or whatnot. Okay, so to create that, let's start with, I guess, a cube. Let's move it off to the side just for the time being. Okay, so the first part of this is going to be kind of this thin plate that connects out to everything. So we'll do this, and this, and this, X, something like that. And then out from this face, we want to extrude. So let's take you, and we're going to want to extrude you along X. Maybe something like this. Maybe it'll come out a little longer, and then we'll size it up along the Y-axis. And then we want to add loop cuts here. So let's create these edges. Oops. Create these edge loops, I mean. So we'll create 2. Like that. Okay, and then each of these is going to be one arm. So coming down like that and like that. In fact, let's yeah, I think this is fine. We'll take you, look from the front, or maybe from the top. Actually, let's take this first. And we'll extrude you maybe like here. Actually, we don't want, I'm trying to think, we don't want it to be quite this wide. Maybe we do want it to be this wide. Okay, I'm gonna try it and then we'll see what happens. So let's extrude maybe to here or so. Then we can take this face and extrude it, but not just along the x-axis or the z-axis. We just want it kind of coming out to here. Something like this. And then maybe we can do the same thing over here. I guess we can use a mirror modifier and then we only have to do this once. Okay, or we'll just do it manually because whatever, it's only a couple faces. Extrude, not along the z-axis, just along everything. So this one went out to here and then down 1, 2, 3, 4, a little less than 5. So 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, a little less than 5. We'll go like to here. Okay, let's now extrude each of these 3 down maybe to make them kind of square, because in real life they're square. Maybe I can't do that. I can extrude like this though. Okay, that should be roughly good. And then we can take this face and let's extrude that here, right click so that we don't actually extrude yet. Size it up in the Y direction to be as wide as this. Yeah, just like that. And then go like this. Okay, so we have this shape now. We want one more cross beam that goes maybe here. So while we're still in edit mode, we can add another cube, move that out to the midpoint over here, size it down till it's like that, and then stretch it out in the Y direction. And I think that'll look pretty accurate. Maybe just to make it a little better, what we can do is, well, let's size it down just so that gets hidden. And then we can take, if we go into wireframe mode and select vertices and select these 2 vertices, we can kind of get it to better align with the rest of the beam that's coming this way. So go like that, and then we'll come up here and fix that the same way. I definitely should have just used a mirror modifier, but what can you do? Okay, come out here. Whoa, why is everything black? What happened? Oh, that's because I was in this mode. Okay. That looks decent. Let's just double check. This should have some added thickness too. Edit mode. Face select. Let's select this face. Look from the side. Extrude it up. Something like that. Okay, so now we have one of the wings. If we want to make it slightly better, what we can do is angle these faces down. So what if we look from the side and go to wireframe mode and select all of this and then rotate it in the y-axis. Or maybe we can just take these and move them down. Yeah, that should work. Something like this. Okay. That's pretty realistic if we go like that. Alright, so now let's take the entire object, back in this mode, take all of it, and let's look from the side and rotate it so that this now becomes flat. So these kind of all come out at an angle, like what we would see in real life, where they're all kind of like 45 degrees. I'm not sure it's exactly 45, but because we can actually do a 45 rotation here, maybe let's try and just do that. So y direction, we'll do 360 minus 45 is 315. I did that because previously when I did 15 it rotated this way, so I just went minus. This is still maybe slightly under rotated, but maybe that's just because of these vertices. What we can do is we can take these, move them up, make sure we're in wireframe mode before we do this, move them up, and then maybe take these and move them over. Something like that. Okay, so now that we have that, let's take the entire piece, let's move it up, and maybe size it down a little bit, and then over in the X direction. Okay. They go right here, like under the box. Maybe we can make this slightly smaller so that there's less clipping. We'll move that in the X direction. Oops. Make sure we're in wireframe mode again. GX. Oh, let's make sure this is now off. Something like that. Now we can take everything, move it under, and then move it up, just so it's kind of like that. Now we can go back to this mode, and we will, to rotate this a couple times around the central post, what we can do is in object mode, let's create an empty. That empty will be plane axes here. Then we want to create a, using this object, our wing, we want to create a array modifier, I believe. And for, we want to turn off relative object offset and maybe off object offset, and then we choose the empty, and then we take our empty and we rotate it in the z-axis by 90. Oh, did that not work? The constant offset? I could have sworn it was could have sworn you can do something like that. Oh, come on. Let's see. This is a bit confusing. I could have sworn there is a way of doing this where you use an empty to create copies of this object but rotate it around a central point. I guess what we can do instead, and I hate doing this because it just feels so inefficient, but I guess for the time being, if I can't get this array thing to work, then let's just do what we can. We'll use a mirror modifier, mirror it around the y-axis. Oh, but the axis is here. We'll change the mirror object to our cylinder. There we go. And then we can take this object, set origin, geometry to origin? No. Is it origin to geometry? Something like that. I think that's what we wanted. And then we can create a duplicate, right click, rotate around the z-axis by 90 degrees. Yeah, I forgot. Okay, this duplicate has to have its own mirror modifier, but instead of the x-axis, it's the y-axis. And we then have to move it to make sure it works. So move it so it's centered around the this. I don't know why my control button is not working. I thought there was a way you can get it to like click to the axis, but oh, you know what that is? That's probably this, right? Is that now working? Or maybe it was I on something else when I was doing this as a grid? I guess that works for the time being, but not necessarily what I wanted to do. Then GY, like that. All right, nice. And we can turn this off now. All right, so we have our wings now for our antenna. I think they look pretty good, pretty realistic. Maybe we'll make them slightly longer. Or, you know, alternatively, let's just make this slightly shorter. That's probably an easier way to do it. Select this face, move it up. Okay, now I can select everything in object mode. Why we're in? I thought we were in object mode, but we were in edit mode. Okay, go like that. Now let's make the ground mesh, I guess. So we will take. Shift A and make a plane. Let's size it up to be roughly this big, just, you know, bigger than the actual antenna itself. In edit mode, we will subdivide it a couple times. Maybe like this, and then we want to cut it in half so that one dimension's square. How should I put this? Right now we have a bunch of squares. In reality, the ground mesh is rectangles, and the width of the rectangle is twice the length of the rectangle. So we'd have kind of each of these cut in two. So I'm trying to think about how you could go about doing that. What if, before we subdivide everything, we add an edge loop? Would that reduce the work? If I go like this, okay, and then we select everything and subdivide it. Oh my god, it does work. Look at that. Nice. Perfect. Okay, so we'll do something like this, and then what we want to do is inset and then inset again. So hit I twice until we get this kind of feature, and we want to go like that to create this like inner space. The inner space is actually not going to be used, so what we do is just hit X and then delete all those faces, and now we have this kind of general outline of the mesh. And we can take all of that and maybe give it some thickness. Just a little bit. Something like that. Nice. Okay, so we have the ground mesh, we have the antenna. The antenna does have some supports that kind of come along here. Let's see, how much time are we in? Okay, we're almost done. Let me just add some color. We don't really need the supports. I'm planning on using this in animation, and for all intents and purposes, you'll understand that this antenna is this antenna, even if you don't see like these parts right here. I think that's not going to lose too much, so I'm okay with that. All right, let's add some colors. As you can see by looking at the real examples, there's really not much, so it's going to be pretty simple. We'll start with this box, I guess. The box is white, so we'll add a material. That material will be hello. There we go. Be white. Maybe we can say it's like slightly weathered towards a little yellow. It is not metallic, but it is very smooth. So like 0.2. And let's go into this mode so that we can see it. Now, why is it all black? What is happening that it would make this? That's so annoying. Hello? Let me try saving this and then reopening it. Because I'm not going to really be able to figure out what to do if, if it's all black. Actually, let me test something out. If I render, oops, if I render, does it appear as black or does it appear as a material? I guess let's add the materials first and then we'll worry about that. We can join these two, by the way. Control J. Oh, no, I guess we cannot. Oh, because when you join them, they get the same modifier. So let's keep them separate, but whatever. Okay, this one will be a shiny gray. Maybe slightly towards blue. It is metallic, so maybe a 1, but it is pretty rough, so like a 0.4 maybe. Of course, we can't see what that looks like, so it's not very helpful to us. And then this is also gray, but maybe a slightly lighter gray. I don't know, maybe like, let's point it towards green because it's sitting in the grass most of the time. It is metallic, so let's set it to 1, and roughness is pretty rough, so 0.6 or so. Okay, so now if I go to F12, we have the color. So, okay, whatever, it's just Blender being stupid, or me being stupid, probably more realistically. Let's go back to this mode temporarily. I did see something that was giving me pause, which is what was happening up here. It looked a little weird, but I guess that's fine. We forgot to add color to this. This can be the same as the ground spokes. So now, let's look at this. Let's take our light object. Let's move it up, move it back towards our camera, change it to a sun, change the strength to 10, angle the sun at the object, our antenna, and now if we hit F12, look at that. We have our LWA antenna. Why is this so white? Is that just it reflecting the sun? I think it probably is. Let's look from a different angle just to make sure. Something like this. Maybe let's rotate the camera so that's centered. Okay, there we go. That looks pretty good. Got the antenna. Maybe let's shade everything smooth, or at least shade the column smooth. The rest of it doesn't have to be. Shade that smooth. I guess another thing we can do is to add some bevels to this object, the top, just like very small, because in reality it is slightly beveled. Okay, and then we can, now I think if we were to shade it smooth, it still retains, yeah, most of that cubic shape. Alright, let's render. And here we go. Here is our LWA antenna. You'll see more of this in the future when I make the interferometry video. But until then, hope you enjoyed. Thanks for watching. See you next time. Peace.